betrayal, lies, deception. They broke the wrong heart. They ruined the wrong life. But revenge? Revenge is a game of patience. Welcome to Revenge Nexus 2.0, where justice is served cold and payback is inevitable. Subscribe now and witness stories that will leave you breathless. Let's start.
I never thought I'd be the woman who lost everything overnight. But here I was, standing in the empty apartment that used to be my home, my fingers trembling as I held the eviction notice. The ink blurred as tears welled up in my eyes, my heart hammering against my ribs. Just weeks ago, I was a happily married woman, financially stable and living the life I thought I had built with love. Now, I was homeless, betrayed, and drowning in debts I never even knew existed. And the person responsible? My own husband. No, ex-husband. Ezra. And the woman he did it all for? My cousin Alina. I never saw it coming. Ezra and I had been married for 4 years. He was charming, smooth-talking, and knew exactly how to make a woman feel like she was the only one in the world. I trusted him blindly, loved him with every fiber of my being. I thought we were a team. I thought he had my back. But all along, he was digging a hole for me to fall into, a hole so deep that I couldn't climb out. It started with little things, missing money from our joint account, a few business investments he refused to tell me about, late-night phone calls he dismissed as work-related. I was foolish enough to ignore the signs, too in love, too trusting, too blind. Then, one night, he just disappeared. No fight, no warning, no goodbye. I came home to an empty house. His clothes were gone. His phone was off. The safe where we kept our emergency savings? Empty. My credit cards? Maxed out. Every last dime I had was gone. And just like that, my life as I knew it was over. I searched for him for days, calling everyone we knew. No one had answers. At least, that's what they said. Until one morning, I received a message that shattered everything. A picture. Ezra and Alina, my cousin, the girl who used to braid my hair when we were kids, the one I trusted like a sister. In the picture, she was wearing my bracelet, the one Ezra had gifted me on our anniversary. And the caption? I felt my heart stop. My vision darkened. My knees buckled beneath me. He had left me. For her. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that he didn't just leave. He destroyed me. He had taken out loans in my name. He had drained my savings. He had left me with bills, debts, and no way to climb out of the financial ruin he had created. And while I struggled to breathe, struggled to survive, they were celebrating. The rage that burned in my chest was unlike anything I had ever felt before. It wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was war. I had nothing left. No home, no money, no husband. But I had one thing, a burning, unshakable need for revenge. And I wasn't going to stop until they both paid. I spent the first few days in a daze, unable to process how my life had fallen apart so fast. The betrayal felt like acid in my veins, burning me from the inside out. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces. Ezra's smug smirk, Alina's satisfied grin. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. And the more I thought about what they had done to me, the more I realized No one was coming to save me. I was truly, utterly alone, but I refused to be their victim. I wiped my tears, straightened my back, and made a promise to myself I would rise from this. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but I knew one thing for sure. They wouldn't get away with this. The first step was survival. With no home, I had nowhere to go. My so-called friends? They had suddenly disappeared the moment I needed them. I guess people love a tragedy until it becomes inconvenient for them. The only person I could turn to was my old college roommate, Mira. She wasn't rich, she wasn't powerful, but she had something more valuable: loyalty. She let me crash on her couch, no questions asked. I spent the next few weeks picking up the broken pieces of my life. Every day, I searched for a job, but Ezra had ruined my credit so badly that even getting a rental was impossible. My savings? Gone. My name? Stained. And as if the universe wasn't done punishing me, I found out they were getting married. Ezra and Alina. A grand wedding. Lavish, extravagant, paid for with the money he stole from me. The headlines made me sick. Power couple of the year, Ezra and Alina set to tie the knot. The comments were even worse. People called them soulmates, talked about how meant to be they were. No one knew the truth. No one knew how they had built their paradise on the ruins of my life. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. They think they won. I wanted to storm into their perfect little world and tear it apart. I wanted to show everyone who Ezra really was, but I had no proof, no voice, no power. I needed a plan. And then, one night, as I scrolled mindlessly through job postings, an opportunity landed in my lap. An anonymous email. "Are you looking for work? Our company is hiring. No background checks required. Start immediately." It was suspicious, too convenient. But I was desperate. I clicked on the link. A private business, a high-paying role, and the owner? Ezra's biggest competitor. My lips curled into a slow, wicked smile. Fate was on my side. This wasn't just a job. This was my way back in. And once I got inside their world, I was going to burn it all down. I walked into that office like I belonged there, like I wasn't a woman with nothing left to lose, like I wasn't about to play the most dangerous game of my life. The company was called Orion Enterprises, and it was everything Ezra had always wanted to be a part of, but never could. They were ruthless, powerful, and dominating the market Ezra had tried to break into. And now, I was about to become their newest employee. I had no business being here. I had no qualifications, no resume that hadn't been destroyed by Ezra's fraud. But I had something more valuable: motivation. I sat across from the CEO, a man named Keon Mercer. Cold, calculated, a man who didn't waste time on pleasantries. His dark eyes studied me like he could see every broken piece inside me. "Tell me why I should hire you," he said, fingers tapping against the desk. I met his gaze, forcing confidence into my voice. "Because I know how your biggest competitor thinks. Because I was married to him." That got his attention. His fingers stopped tapping. His sharp expression didn't change, but I saw the interest spark in his eyes. "Ezra Wren?" he said slowly, as if testing me. I nodded. "The same man who stole from me, bankrupted me, and left me for my own cousin." Keon's lips twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "And what is it you want, Ms. Calloway?" My last name felt foreign. It was the first time I had used it in years. I wasn't Ezra's wife anymore. I wasn't anyone's wife. I was just me now. I want a job, I said, and an opportunity to destroy him. Silence. Heavy. Tense. And then Keon leaned back, a slow smirk spreading across his face. Now that, Ms. Calloway, is an answer I can respect.
And just like that, I was in. The job wasn't glamorous. I wasn't some high-level executive plotting corporate takedowns from a glass office. No, Keon made me start from the bottom. I worked in the background, doing research, gathering information. I studied Ezra's deals, his weaknesses, the cracks in his business. And the more I dug, the more I found. Ezra wasn't just a fraud in our marriage. He was a fraud in business too. Illegal deals, shady partnerships, lies stacked on top of lies. He had built his empire on stolen money and deception, and I was going to be the one to bring it all down. But I wasn't just working against Ezra. I was watching him. I followed their wedding plans, the expensive venue, the luxury vendors, Alina's smug interviews about finding true love. It made me sick. But I forced myself to watch, to memorize every detail. Because on the night of their perfect wedding, when they thought they had won, I was going to ruin them. The weeks leading up to their wedding felt like a countdown to war. Every detail, every piece of information I gathered was a weapon I could use. I wasn't just planning revenge, I was planning destruction. Ezra and Alina thought they had won. They thought I was buried under the weight of their betrayal, drowning in my own misfortune. But they had no idea I was rising from the ashes, stronger, smarter, and ready to make them suffer. The day before their wedding, I sat in Orion Enterprises, my laptop open, scanning through financial reports that told me everything I needed to know. Ezra was broke, not just struggling, not just in a rough patch, flat out drowning in debt. The money he had stolen from me? Gone. The investments he made with my savings? Bad deals. One wrong move and he would lose everything. And tomorrow, he was about to have the most expensive wedding of the year. My lips curled into a slow, satisfied smile. Perfect, because by the time the night was over, he wouldn't just lose his money. He'd lose everything. I arrived at the wedding unnoticed. It was easy, really. No one pays attention to the waitstaff, the people running around in black and white uniforms carrying trays of champagne. Mira had helped me slip into the catering team last minute. A fake name, a borrowed uniform, and suddenly I was walking right through the doors of their wedding, moving unnoticed through the golden chandeliers, white roses, and the hundreds of guests who had no idea they were about to witness a disaster. And there, in the center of it all, stood Ezra and Alina, dressed in their picture-perfect outfits, pretending to be a fairy tale couple. I watched them laugh, surrounded by people showering them with admiration, oblivious to the storm about to hit them. I tightened my grip on the tray I was holding. Let the games begin. I slipped into the backstage area where the media crew was preparing for the big wedding speech. The cameras were already set up, ready to broadcast their love story to the world. But I had other plans. Pulled out my phone, connected to the hidden drive I had been working on for weeks. Bank statements, fraudulent transactions, emails proving Ezra's dirty deals. Every lie, every scam, every bit of deception he had built his empire on. It was all there. And I was about to show the entire world. I clicked the final button. And then I waited. The moment Ezra stepped up to the microphone, flashing his arrogant smile, ready to thank his guests, the screens around the room flickered. The slideshow of their beautiful love story glitched. And then the truth appeared. Screens filled with evidence. Bank statements proving the fraud. Screenshots of private messages. Emails. Every dirty secret Ezra had hidden, exposed in front of hundreds of people. Gasps filled the room. People murmured in shock. The guests turned to Ezra, their admiration morphing into suspicion. I watched from the shadows as his world crumbled. Alina's face twisted in horror. She turned to him, her voice rising above the noise. "What is this, Ezra?" Ezra's confident smirk shattered as his eyes darted around, panicked, scrambling for an explanation. but there was no explanation, because the truth was there for everyone to see. I slipped out quietly, my heart thudding with satisfaction. Tonight, I wasn't done. Tonight was just the beginning. Chaos erupted in the ballroom. Guests gasped, whispers turning into full-blown outrage as the evidence continued flashing across the massive screens. Every fraudulent deal, every stolen penny, every lie Ezra had ever told, all of it was out in the open. Alina's perfectly curated wedding night was unraveling into a public disaster. I stood in the shadows watching the destruction unfold, my pulse thrumming with satisfaction. Ezra's face had lost all color. His hands trembled at his sides, eyes darting wildly around the room, searching for a way out.
His smooth charm, the same charm that once made me fall for him, was useless now. People weren't looking at him with admiration anymore. They were looking at him like a fraud. "Ezra, what the hell is this?" Alina shrieked, her voice slicing through the noise. She turned to him, gripping the sleeve of his tuxedo, her eyes burning with panic. "Tell me this isn't real." But he couldn't, because it was real. Because I had made sure that every single person in that room saw the truth. The murmurs grew louder. People pulled out their phones, recording the screens, snapping pictures. Someone from the press, one of the reporters covering their grand love story, stepped forward. "Mr. Wren, is it true you embezzled millions from investors?" Another guest, one of Ezra's high-profile business connections, crossed his arms. "Did you really steal your wife's money?" Ex-wife. But I'd let them figure that out soon enough. Ezra's lips parted, but no words came out. For the first time in his life, he had nothing to say. His hands clenched into fists. This is a lie! Someone is trying to sabotage me!" His voice was desperate now, cracks forming in the mask he had worn so effortlessly for years. But the damage was done. The media crew was still rolling. This wasn't a private disaster. This was a public execution. Alina turned back to the screens, her breathing ragged. The same screens that had once displayed their love story were now a graveyard of their secrets. Her name popped up next. Bank transfers in her name. Money she had taken. Funds she had helped Ezra steal. And just like that, her hands, once clutching Ezra for support, shoved him away. "You dragged me into this?" she shrieked, her voice shrill with betrayal. Ezra staggered back. "Alina, slap." The sound echoed through the ballroom as her palm cracked across his face. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I bit my lip to keep from smiling. Poetic. "Are you insane?" she screamed, shoving him again. "You told me you were building something real, that you had money, that you—" She cut herself off, horror twisting her expression, and that's when it hit her. The money was gone. Ezra wasn't just exposed, he was broke. Her face contorted, realization dawning like a cold slap to the face. She had married a man with nothing. I wished I could bottle this moment, the exact second her own betrayal turned against her. "Alina," Ezra pleaded, his voice breaking. "You know I love you. We can fix this." But she had already taken a step back, and then another, and then she turned, lifting the hem of her overpriced wedding dress, and ran. The woman he destroyed me for, the woman he threw away our marriage for, running from him like he was nothing. Poetic. The night should have ended there. Ezra humiliated, Alina gone, my revenge complete. But it wasn't over, because as I turned to leave, I felt it. A shift in the room, a presence, someone watching me. I followed the weight of their stare and locked eyes with Keon Mercer, the man who had given me a way back in, the man who had been watching everything unfold. And the smirk on his face told me one thing. He knew exactly what I had done, and he wasn't done with me yet. I slipped out of the ballroom, my heart pounding with satisfaction. adrenaline still thrumming through my veins. The night had gone better than I'd planned. Ezra was ruined. His perfect world had collapsed in front of everyone who once worshipped him. And Alina? She had run from him the second she realized she'd married a man with nothing. I should have felt lighter, freer. But as I stepped into the dimly lit hallway leading to the exit, I heard a slow, measured set of footsteps behind me. I didn't have to turn around to know who it was. Keon Mercer. The man who had hired me. The man who had given me the resources to tear Ezra apart. The man who for some reason had been watching me all night like he knew exactly what I was up to. I stopped walking. So did he. I turned slowly, facing him. Keon stood a few feet away, his sharp, unreadable eyes scanning my face. His tailored suit was pristine, as if the chaos inside the ballroom hadn't touched him at all. And then, he did something that made my breath catch. He smirked. "Impressive," he said, his voice low, amused. I raised an eyebrow, keeping my face blank. "What are you talking about?" Keon chuckled softly, taking a slow step toward me. "Come on, don't insult my intelligence." His gaze flicked toward the ballroom. "That was quite a show." I held my ground. "If you think I had something to do with that, then you're mistaken." His smirk deepened. "Am I?" Silence stretched between us, a battle of stares, and then Keon tilted his head slightly. "You know, most people in your position would have run, would have disappeared quietly." I didn't respond. "But you?" He let out a low chuckle. "You burned him to the ground." I swallowed, refusing to let him see how much his words affected me. "What do you want, Keon?" I asked, my voice calm. Keon studied me for a moment, then slipped his hands into his pockets, his eyes dark with something unreadable. "I think we could be useful to each other." My stomach twisted. I didn't like how that sounded. I crossed my arms. "I don't work for you anymore." "Not yet," he corrected smoothly. "But let's be honest, you didn't come to Orion Enterprises for a job." He took another step closer. "You came for revenge. And now that you've had your moment, what's next?" I clenched my jaw. Because he was right. I had spent every waking moment plotting Ezra's downfall, but now that he was destroyed, what now? Keon leaned in just slightly, lowering his voice. "If you're looking for an exit, you can walk away right now. But if you want to keep playing this game," his lips curved into a slow, knowing smile, "you're going to need more than just revenge." I inhaled sharply. I should have walked away. I should have told him I was done. But something about the way he said it made my pulse race, because deep down, I knew I wasn't done. Not yet. And Keon Mercer? He knew exactly how to keep me in the game. I should have walked away. I had won, hadn't I? Ezra was humiliated. Alina had abandoned him, and everyone had seen him for the fraud he truly was. My revenge was complete. So why did I feel like it wasn't enough? I stared at Keon, his words looping in my mind. "You're going to need more than just revenge." He wasn't wrong. Ezra's reputation was in shambles, but that wasn't enough to erase the years he had stolen from me. He needed to feel what I felt. He needed to suffer. And Keon Mercer? He knew how to make it happen. I narrowed my eyes. "What exactly are you offering?" Keon smirked, his hands still tucked into his pockets as he leaned against the wall, looking too relaxed for a man who had just watched an empire collapse. "Control," he said simply. I scoffed. "That's vague." Keon chuckled. "You're smart. You'll figure it out." He pushed off the wall and took a slow step toward me, his sharp gaze never leaving mine. "Ezra's downfall is just beginning. His business is going to crumble under the weight of those revelations. Investors will pull out. Lawsuits will follow. He'll be drowning in legal trouble. My heart sped up. Good. But, Keon continued, his voice dipping lower, ruining his career is one thing. Destroying the man himself? That takes patience. I swallowed hard. And why do you care? Keon tilted his head slightly. Let's just say, I have my own reasons for wanting Ezra out of the picture. I frowned, suspicion creeping in. What kind of reasons? Keon's smirk remained, but something flickered in his eyes. Something I couldn't quite read. Does it matter? He asked. The enemy of my enemy is my greatest asset. Isn't that how the saying goes? I hated that he had a point. I wasn't stupid. Keon wasn't some savior swooping in to help me out of the goodness of his heart. He was a businessman, cold, calculated, and dangerous in ways I hadn't yet figured out. But I also knew one thing for sure. Keon Mercer didn't lose. And if I wanted Ezra to feel the full weight of his destruction, I needed someone like Keon on my side. I took a slow breath. What do you have in mind? Keon's smirk widened, but his eyes remained unreadable. You'll see soon enough. His answer was frustratingly vague, but I didn't push. Not yet. Think it over, he said, stepping past me. If you want out, walk away now. But if you want to watch Ezra break, really break, then I'll be waiting. And then he was gone, disappearing down the hallway, leaving me standing there with my pulse hammering in my ears. I should have left. I should have walked away. But instead, I stood there, my mind racing, because deep down, I already knew. I wasn't done. Not yet. And Keon Mercer? He was about to teach me how to finish what I started. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake on Mira's couch, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying everything. Ezra's public downfall, Alina running away, Keon's offer. I had spent so much time planning my revenge, but now that it had finally happened, it wasn't enough. Ezra still had his name. His business, while shaken, wasn't completely destroyed. People like him always found a way to crawl back up, to manipulate, to rebuild. And Alina? She'd slip away from the wreckage, untouched. I wanted them both to suffer. I sat up, rubbing my hands over my face. If I walked away now, Ezra would lick his wounds and find a way to recover. But if I stayed in the game, if I worked with Keon, Ezra wouldn't just lose. He'd be erased. I picked up my phone, my fingers hovering over the screen. Then I made my decision. I texted Keon. I'm in. The next day, I met him at a private lounge, one of those places only people with money and power had access to. Keon was already waiting, his suit sharp, his posture relaxed as he leaned back in his chair, sipping a whiskey. He smirked as I sat down across from him. Took you long enough. I rolled my eyes. Cut the theatrics. What's the plan? Keon chuckled, setting his drink down. Straight to business. I like that. He slid a file across the table. I hesitated before picking it up. Inside were documents, company records, emails, transactions, all linked to Ezra. I frowned. I already exposed him. What else is there? Keon leaned forward slightly. Ezra's downfall started last night, but it's not over. Right now, he's scrambling, making calls, trying to cover his tracks. But he has one thing left. I stiffened. What? Keon's eyes gleamed. His last investor. A sick feeling twisted in my gut. And let me guess. If that investor pulls out, Ezra loses everything? Keon nodded. Completely. No second chances. No rebuilding. He'll be finished. I exhaled slowly. And what do you need me for? Keon smirked. Ezra may be a fraud, but he's a charming fraud. He's still trying to convince this investor that last night was just a smear campaign. He needs one last push to make them stay. I clenched my jaw. I knew Ezra, knew how he operated. He could talk his way out of anything if given enough time. "Who's the investor?" I asked. Kian's expression darkened. "Someone who doesn't like liars." He tapped the file. "Your job is simple. Convince them to walk away." A rush of satisfaction burned through me. This was it. The final blow. I leaned back, meeting Kian's gaze. "Consider it done." Kian's smirk widened. "I knew I liked you." The meeting with the investor was set for that evening. I had one shot. If I did this right, Ezra wouldn't just be ruined. He'd be permanently erased. And after everything he'd done, he deserved every second of it.